For USC Annenberg Media, I'm Connor McGlynn in the studio today with three-time NFL Pro Bowler and two-time first-team All-American wide receiver Keyshawn Johnson. Keyshawn, football season's back. You excited?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Connor. Yeah, you get to enjoy the late summer into the fall. You've been waiting for it all year long, both college and professional. So I'm pretty excited about what's ahead, I guess, to say the least.
There you
go. Especially in terms of USC. I want to really see what they have to offer for this season.
What's ahead is always the question on everyone's mind. And with USC coming off of a pretty above-average performance, some would say, last season, heading into this year, a lot of young talent especially. What are some of your expectations? I know you're one of the more vocal alumni.
Well, I think for the most part they came out of the stumbling blocks last year, playing a Alabama team that eventually got to the Final Four and into the championship against Clemson. So when you look at that measuring stick, you say, okay, we started off slow, but we caught fire, and then we made a nice little run toward the end of the season, and we finished off everything. Winning the Rose Bowl against Penn State. So I'm looking forward to them starting where they finished. The young talent, learning how to play and be, I guess you could call it professionals on the collegiate level and really, truly just try and dominate college football. You start off with Western Michigan. I think you play Texas the next week. Those, to me, are two big games. One, because Western Michigan was a good football program a year ago, although they lost their head coach and the top wide receiver. But yet and still, they're somewhat coming into a situation as the underdogs. So you always got to be careful of that. Then, obviously, the Texas week is going to be a big hoopla about Texas beating the SC in the national championship game with Vince Young and the Reggie Bush fumble and the whole deal. So that week, I'm sure, will be built up to become one of the big games of college football throughout the course of the season. And Texas also has a new head coach. So, you start off with those first two games, and then you see what happens from there.
So with all that changeover, obviously they don't have to face Corey Davis. They are going to have to face Tom Herman in Texas. But with USC coming in as a projected top 5 team, is it national championship or bust with them?
No, I don't think so. I think in the second year of Clay Helton, learning everything, I think if they can win the Pac-12, get to a major BCS or is it still a BCS?
No, it's not. It's just college football playoff now.
If they can just if they can get to like one of the major bowls,
right.
If they somehow finish 5 or 6 in the playoff picture, then I think that's still a successful season. Although the goal is to get into the Final Four. Now, there's only 4 teams that can do it. And SC could be on the outside looking in, or they could be on the inside looking out. It just depends on how they tackle the season and take care of business.
So a New Year's Six game would be a success.
That's what it's New Year's Six.
The New Year's Six.
Yeah, I think the New Year's Six would be a success.
Okay. Well, one of the guys that's obviously leading that charge is Sam Darnold. He has gathered pretty much all of the media attention this offseason heading into the year. As somebody who's he has campaigns going, suck for Sam for projected number 1 overall pick. You yourself were a number 1 overall pick going to the Jets, who many think might be able to get Sam Darnold this year. What type of advice do you give to a guy dealing with that type of pressure?
Well, I think he just got to enjoy college football as a starter. He only started 9 games for USC last year. 9 games. I mean, just 9 games. And it's not like he played an entire season. But enjoy college football. Enjoy the moment. Keep your eye on the prize and the task at hand. And your ultimate goal for me would be to get the team into the championship game, win the Pac-12, the Rose Bowl, or whatever that big situation is that are in front of you, and not worry about who is trying to lose games in the NFL to draft you. Because at the end of the day, Sam Darnold may not even be the top quarterback off the board. It just falls that way. I mean, he starts off as everybody's favorite. By the time you get to January, when they really start to evaluate guys that have declared, somebody could come up and say, well, he's not really all that. We like the kid from Oklahoma State, or we like the Washington State kid, or we like Josh Rosen better for what we do. So if I was him, I'd just worry about SC and playing football here.
Well, it's his ability to spread the ball around. This year he doesn't have really that one USC receiver that people are accustomed to. There's no Juju Smith-Schuster, no Nelson Aguilar, no Marquise Lee. but instead they have a plethora of talent throughout the depth chart. How does that kind of change things up when you don't really have the number one guy?
Well, I think the number one guy for them is Deontay Burnett, a guy who people just really, because he's played the last 2 years under the shadows of kind of like a Juju Smith. But all for the last 2 years, all I could do is say that's the best receiver on the team. Because when you play the position, you know how guys move around and what they're capable of doing. And I think him and Sam Darnold's connection in the Rose Bowl or throughout the year when he took over certainly gave you a glimpse of promising future for that young man. And then if Steven Mitchell can come back off an injury, Tyler Vaughn, if he can get into the mix, there's a guy, I can't think of his name. I think there's a kid, I think his name is Von Jones or something. I want to say it's Von Jones.
Oh, Vallis Jones.
Vallis Jones, that's who it is. He could be a guy who can flat out run,
right,
that can lift the coverage, that could be somewhat of a surprise. You still have Michael Pittman, what he's capable of doing as a young man. So there's some young receivers that's there, but the one big dog to me is Deontay Burnett.
Even the new freshman coming in, Joseph Lewis, he was a big target.
You got Joseph Lewis coming in. I mean, maybe they do some tricky stuff with Jack Jones over there on the offensive side of the ball. So Keyshawn Young. So it's just a bunch of younger guys. But the one guy that you pay attention to the most is the tight end, Abuba Boucher.
Or Bebe?
Bebe or whatever his name is, the tight end, but also Burnett.
All right, well, let's stick with Deontay Burnett for a second then. You're no shy one when it comes to the Rose Bowl. You're in the Rose Bowl Hall of Fame. You had the record for most receptions in a game with 12 before Burnett broke it with 13 and that famous touchdown.
Oh, did he break it?
Yeah, he had 13. That third touchdown was his 13th catch. So just kind of focusing in on that and that performance as a whole, have you seen a game like that Rose Bowl before?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it was an exciting Rose Bowl because it was a little bit of a back and forth, then all of a sudden the drive that won the game in the end was just, it was one of those thrillers. But that's what bowl games should be. It shouldn't be blowouts. They should be back and forth, then somebody wins in the end.
That's what kind of comes along with the New Year's Six territory.
Yes.
All right, well, let's transition a little bit to your path. Obviously, you grew up just within a baseball throw of the campus.
Literally a baseball throw. My one of my apartment buildings overlooked the baseball field.
Well, there you go. So as somebody that was a ball boy at USC, that came around campus all the time, what was it like for you after stepping foot on campus as a transfer from West LA to be able to walk into the Coliseum and feel that emotion of, I'm playing for USC?
It was somewhat a bit of an emotion because you finally have arrived to the point where you get to play for your favorite team. It wasn't the Raiders, it wasn't the Rams, it wasn't the Dodgers or Lakers, it was USC because I had spent so much time on the campus as a kid. Now I had a chance to run out of the Coliseum. And I remember we were opening up against Washington. And so I had a chance to kind of walk down on the field and be in the Coliseum as a player and not as a spectator. So it was one of those heartfelt moments that last with me forever.
How do you juxtapose that feeling as your first game at the Coliseum versus your first game as a pro?
Different. One was a lifelong dream of going to USC and being a Trojan and going to classes and graduating on the campus and getting a degree and all those things. The other one was, if I make it to the pros, then I make it to the pros. It didn't dawn on me like, oh my God, I'm in the pros now. I felt like just going to USC, I had accomplished a lot.
Going back and listening to your coach John Robinson talk about you, he kind of qualified your charisma and your ambition as something that set you apart. How did you allow that and your personality off the field to kind of impact your career, whether it was in college, whether it was in the pros, or even now? I've
been the same my entire life. I mean, I haven't changed one bit. For me, I just always followed the lead of other people that were ahead of me and tried to not necessarily emulate, but make sure that I duplicated the right things, whether it was understanding how to communicate with people, charisma-wise. I am who I am. I mean, there's no, and then ambition and goals and just working hard and knowing that without those things, probably wouldn't be successful. You've got to strive for greatness at everything that you do. And greatness is interpreted differently by everybody. Some people think because you had a great Rose Bowl game that you're great. That's not true. I just happen to have a good game. But when you continue to master certain things that are in front of you and you don't flinch, to me, that's sort of greatness.
You've always kind of been able to build those type of lessons out of your relationships with different people, whether it's players or head coaches. I know specifically Bill Parcells kind of jumps off the board. You had somewhat of a rocky relationship with John Gruden. What is something that you took away from one head coach that really stuck with you, and who was it?
Well, I feel like I had great relationships with every head coach I've had all the way from high school through the pros. I mean, for the most part, my communication lines are open with all of my head coaches except for John Gruden. I think at the time, when you think about a guy like John Gruden who's young, who wants it to be all about himself, and a guy like myself who's very aware and knowledgeable, and I can see right through you, I think that was the biggest problem with him. But in terms of taking things away, I mean, I learned a lot from all of them. And you know, there's not one thing that really just sticks out. They all basically say the same message, just differently. Whether it was Tony Dungy or Coach Fox or Robertson or Bill Parcells, they all sent the same message. They all just did it differently.
Well, I know one message that you always send is to stay in school and to really try and get a degree. You finished with USC, social science and history. At a time when almost half of the people in the NFL don't have degrees, how do you try to encourage people to stay in school and to go back and finish up and really earn that degree?
Well, I certainly wouldn't encourage someone to stay in school if they had an opportunity to make a whole lot of money. I mean, it's all different situations. I mean, everybody's a little bit different. But if you have the opportunity to get a degree, you get the degree, because it's one thing that people could never take away from you. If you have a degree, the way the world works is they're more susceptible to hire you with a degree than somebody without. You're looked upon differently when you're sitting at the table amongst people and everybody's talking about, oh, I went to this school, I went to that school, oh, I graduated from here, and then you're sitting there in the corner and you really can't say anything. That's one thing I say to my son, all the time. I said, pick up a book and read, or whatever the case is, follow those sort of things. So when you're sitting at the table, you can engage in that conversation. You don't have to feel isolated. Somebody start talking about whatever the president of the United States is doing right now, and you have no knowledge of it, you're going to sit at the table and you're going to just be quiet. But if you know that they're completely screwing things up, then you could have a conversation. If you think that they're doing things the right way, you could have a conversation. But if you don't know anything, then you just sit in the corner and you be quiet. And that goes to speak to the degree side of it. If you have your degree, you can have a conversation about having your degree, because everybody else surely going to have it. You don't want to be the odd man out.
It's all about development. So one way you're helping develop people, especially the young kids right now, is through the Play LA event happening that helps raise money for the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. How did you get involved with that, and why is it important for you to be a part of events like that?
Well, I got involved through Disney and ABC and ESPN, and I've always been trying to give back to my community in different ways. Children's Hospital Los Angeles is something that, when you got kids of your own and you understand sometimes, there's medical issues and there's all sorts of things that families can't necessarily cover, medical expenses, and you have an opportunity, whether you're digging in your pocket or you just lending your name or your body or put smiles on kids' faces, you always want to, at least I always want to be a part of that. And I think, when Children's Hospital Los Angeles reached out, or ESPN reached out through Children's Hospital Los Angeles to invite me to join, I jumped on the opportunity immediately because, you get a chance to interact with kids, you get a chance to teach them techniques about football or whatever the case may be. Just have a fun day. And I remember being a kid myself. So when you look at that, you say, okay, it's August 5th. It's at the Los Angeles Coliseum or the Memorial Los Angeles Coliseum, depending on who you're asking. But it's August 5th, and it goes from 9:30 to 2. And kids of all ages can come. and join. It's a $50 registration fee, and they'll have an opportunity to not only meet myself, but Layla Ali will be there, Marcellus Wiley will be there, myself, then a host of other people. And you enjoy it. And I've done things like this before with different charitable contributions and events, and it's a blast. I mean, it really is. My kids are going to come out with me because, they heard it on the Disney Channel in the car. And there's an actress, I think her name is Landry Binger, if I'm saying it right, that is going to be there as well. So they were all excited about going. Prior to that, I'm like, yo, you guys want to go with me Saturday morning? They're like, oh, no. And then they heard it and they called and it's like, we want to go. I'm like, okay. So they want to hopefully bump into her. But anytime, again, if you could help in any way with kids, you take that on.
As somebody who's LA through and through from birth until now.
Always. I ain't going nowhere.
How does that kind of buy into the sense of community, the fact that you're still where you're from? This is you.
Well, I think it says a lot. I've always tried to help the community. I don't, you grow up in communities. I grew up in South LA. That's one community. I live in Calabasas. That's another community. I lived in Beverly Hills. Was another community. But Los Angeles as a whole is a community of mine. So no matter what, if it's in LA and I'm able to do it because I look at LA as my entire community, is a little bit different. Some people just look at the blocks that they live on. I look at the region that I live in. I mean, this is important to me, although I'm not putting on the event. I'm a guest at the event. But when you think about the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, you think about all the things that go on with children. Kids die of cancer. They have cancer, they beat it. The kids have all sorts of different diseases that we don't know and we don't know anything about, that they have to raise money to do the research to try and find a cure for those sort of things. So it's like, okay, no problem, close to heart, not a big deal. Let's figure out what the time, the dates are, I'll be there.
Well, there you have it. You heard it from him. Keyshawn Johnson's going to be a special guest at the Play LA event, supporting the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles on August 5th at the LA Memorial Coliseum. If you'd like to register, you can click and follow this link below, or you can also register on site. He is also a great guest in studio today. Keyshawn, thanks a lot for coming in.
Anytime.
Well, there you have it. USC football kicks off first week of September over at the LA Coliseum against Western Michigan, as Keyshawn said earlier. And for more information, you can always follow along at www.uscannenbergmedia.com.